When I first started testing this recipe, I was making my Mississippi pot roast exactly like everybody else. Then I thought, why am I doing this? I want to be different. Let's get it done quicker. And so that's what we're going to do today. Welcome to the Salt and Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today we're making a very simple recipe for Mississippi pot roast. You may have already made it. Then we're going to turn that pot roast into a po' boy sandwich. And oh my goodness, it is delicious. And there's a special mayonnaise that goes on this sandwich. And oh, you don't want to miss that. I'm going to share that at the end. Okay, so Mississippi pot roast. Usually, it's either going to be braised in the oven for hours. It's going to be pressure cooked for 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the size of the roast. Or you could slow cook it for hours and hours. You can still do that. Those methods are fine. But I am so impatient. Waiting 2 hours for dinner by the time you get it all set up and pressure cooked for 90 minutes with a full natural release, it's just too long. I'm not doing that. And I shred it anyway. And most people do shred their Mississippi pot roast at the end. So let's not waste that time. Let's cut this roast up into chunks and then get it done a whole lot quicker. And another change I'm going to make is not using a packet of ranch seasoning, not using a packet of the au jus powder. I made up my own mix, and oh my gosh, it is delicious, let me tell you. The other ingredients are pretty traditional. I've got the pepperoncinis and I've got some butter. All right, let's get started. You can literally dump everything in and pressure cook, and it's fine, but I like to brown up the chuck roast first. That's what I'm using. I have a 3-pound chuck roast. The beauty of this recipe is that it doesn't matter if you have a 2-pound chuck roast, a 1-pound chuck roast, a 5-pound chuck roast. Your times are going to be the same because we're going to cut it up. So no matter what size pot roast you have, no matter what style pot roast you have, really, because you could use something other than a chuck roast if you wanted to. Cut them into these chunks and you're going to be able to pressure cook as quickly as I can. So this is kind of a rough looking chuck roast. I'm really glad I'm cutting it up because it's got a lot of this sinewy, tough stuff in between the meat. So I'm gonna follow those lines, but it doesn't matter how you chop it up. What you wanna have is about 3 to 4 inch cubes of your beef. So you could even really probably go a little bit bigger and cut it in fourths. But I'm gonna follow this so that I can get some of this stuff out. See all that right there? I'm just gonna kind of trim that out. Now, long pressure cooking times usually will dissolve most of this, but not all of it. But we're gonna go on a short pressure cook time, so I'm gonna take as much out as I can. All right, there we go. So now everything's trimmed up, and now we want to season it up, and we also want to get our pan heated because we are going to season this and then sear it to brown it. That brings in a lot of flavor, so I recommend that you do it that way. What I'm going to use instead of oil is I'm going to use clarified butter to brown up the meat. That has a higher smoke point. It's not going to burn on me, but you can use oil or butter or clarified butter, or even ghee if you have some. Sear saute is what you want. Go on high and hit start. Let the pot heat up for about 5 minutes and then put in about 2 tablespoons of oil or butter or ghee or a combination of any of those, or clarified butter like I'm going to use. All right, now our seasoning blend. Let's talk about that. What I have in here is 1 tablespoon of dried parsley, 1 tablespoon of dried dill, 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1.5 teaspoons of fine ground sea salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and 2 tablespoons of dried buttermilk. And that is the secret ingredient, okay? So try to find that. I get it at Walmart, so it's pretty easy to find. And that is going to be our ranch packet, so to speak. And it is, oh my gosh, so much better than a ranch packet. All right, the pot's heated up enough. Let's get in about 2 tablespoons of, this is the clarified butter. And then let's get our meat coated up with this seasoning. We're not going to use all of it on the meat. Now, if you wanted to, You could definitely do this in a bag. Probably would be a little bit easier, honestly. But I don't have one handy, so we're gonna do it this way. And once you season it up, just throw it in the pot. Once the beef starts to brown up, then give it a flip. Oh my gosh, that looks so amazing. Look at that. Oh, wow. This looks gorgeous already. All right, that looks really good. Now we'll let the other side brown. I will be adding the remaining bit of seasoning at the very end, so we'll just set that over to the side. Now with the pepperoncinis, what I would say, if you haven't had them before, I would definitely recommend tasting them because you can put as few in or you can put none in if you don't like them at all. But you can put as few or as many in as you want. We are gonna use about 1/2 cup of the juice. If you don't want this flavor, you don't like the spice, or you don't like the flavor, whatever, use 1/2 cup of beef stock or beef broth instead and you'll be fine. Now what I usually do with the peppers is I cut the stem off of all of them. And I use personally between 10 and 12. Depends on their size really. So I try to get about 1 cup of them in there. And then some of them, if they're small like this, I leave whole. And others I will dice up a little bit or slice up really. I don't worry about dicing them. And I throw those in the pot like that. I personally like that flavor. I think it infuses more flavor into the beef than just putting them all in whole. So I split it up. Totally optional. You could do it either way. You could slice them all or keep them all whole. It doesn't matter. And I do include the seeds. You don't have to. But then you get into, it becomes a little bit of a labor kind of recipe. And the idea is that it's quick and easy. And quicker than most Mississippi pot roast recipes because we cut that meat up. All right, that looks good. Now we want to put in our 1/2 cup of the pepperoncini juice and get that way down in the bottom and make sure that you move the meat around and make sure nothing is stuck on the bottom. That is the cause for the water notice a lot of the time. And we are going under pressure with not a whole lot of liquid, okay? I don't like to water it down isn't really the right word because I wouldn't use water, but I would put beef stock in, but I don't even like to do that. I like to keep the minimum liquid because the beef is going to release quite a bit of liquid. All right, we wanna move fast here because we're steaming a lot and we don't want all that steam to get out. You can put between 1/2 stick and 1 stick of butter, which is 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of butter. I use salted, you could use unsalted. Put at least 1 right down here so it starts to melt right away. Then you could put 1 up over on the meat. It's perfectly fine. Now, when it comes to the seasonings, I recommend getting a little spoon and putting it right as much on the meat as you can. And it's not gonna look very pretty when we open up this lid, but it will help prevent that water notice, okay? Because if this sits on the bottom and starts to cook on the bottom, it's gonna probably trigger that. So we wanna avoid that at all costs. But we want these flavors in there because, that's what makes Mississippi pot roast so delicious is this ranch flavoring. Okay, whatever pressure cooker you're using, you're gonna put on the pressure lid now. This one I have to hit start, stop. Make sure your valve in the back is to the sealed position. We need to go over here to get to the pressure cook. High is what you want, 30 minutes. And hit start. It's gonna come to pressure fairly quickly because the pot's really hot and boiling. Steam's already being produced. So I would say probably about 5 minutes, 8 at the tops, okay? Once the 30-minute pressure cook time is up, you're gonna do anywhere from a 5, 10, 15-minute or a full natural release. It doesn't matter which one you wanna do. The beef is gonna have enough liquid in there that it's gonna be sitting quite far down in the liquid. So even if you only went 5 or 10 minutes of a natural release, you're gonna be fine. I'm gonna go 10. That's kind of where I think is the sweet spot, but really 5 minutes is fine, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you wanna do, or a full natural release. Let me just tell you, the smells coming out of here when I did the steam release, amazing. Oh my gosh, amazing. All right, open up the lid when all the steam is and the pressure is released. Do that away from you because it is gonna be steamy. Now go in with your tongs and start to shred up the beef. And look at this, it just falls apart. It is so amazing. I can just get right in there and just pull it. Oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. Move the meat over. So remember those seasonings that were on top? We're gonna get those in with these juices here. And just break it up. Now, you could use your mix and chop too if you have one of those. That would work great for this. Oh my gosh. And then you see how the stuff that's on the top here, when it gets into with the juices, it thickens it and it creates a little gravy. So if you don't want to make the po' boy like I'm gonna do, you could do it this way. And then just serve it on a plate with some mashed potatoes and use the little juice as the gravy. You can also thicken the juice with, a flour slurry or a cornstarch slurry if you wanted to. All right, that's looking good. Now let's get it out into our serving bowl. All right. Now when I get down to about here, I like to actually lift the pot out and just pour the juices over top. That's gonna keep your meat really moist and delicious. Okay. And there we have it, Mississippi pot roast for po' boy sandwiches. That's ready in so much less time than most Mississippi pot roast recipes. All right, we can turn this off. We are done here. Now, let's talk about our sandwich. So I have about 6 inches of a French baguette that I split in half and then toasted at 400 degrees for about 5 minutes in the oven. And it's perfect, okay? It's not too crunchy. It's perfect. I keep it up like this so that this part gets a little bit crunchier than the bottom. This will create a little barrier from the juices that we're gonna put on here so it doesn't get like a soggy sandwich because nobody wants a soggy sandwich. Now, the mayonnaise. Homemade mayonnaise, special for this sandwich, okay? It has all the seasonings that went into the seasoning blend that we made the Mississippi pot roast with. Then it's got eggs and a little bit of vinegar and, of course, oil. I used avocado oil. I have never been successful at making mayonnaise at home. This turned out perfectly, and it tastes so good. I cannot wait to use the same base ingredients and make all kinds of different mayonnaise. And I also use like about half of the oil that most recipes call for. So I really like that too, because I always thought my homemade mayonnaise was way too oily. All right, so let's go ahead and get some of this down on the bun or the bread. Don't be stingy with it either. All right, look at that. Oh my gosh. And then we're gonna put some romaine lettuce, which I cut the very middle out because that's a little tough and I don't like that on my sandwich. And we have really thinly sliced tomatoes here. All right, now let's get this meat on. However much you wanna put on is fine. Nobody's gonna judge. Oh my gosh. So good. And then I also like to spoon a little bit of this. Oh, so good. And then if you want to, add a few of the pepperoncinis. All right, put that on top and our sandwich is done. Look at this. Oh my gosh. It is amazing. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna cut this in half. Oh. Oh my. It totally melts in your mouth. It is so good. The spice level is perfect. Not overly spicy. Oh my goodness, this is gonna be good. It's gonna be a little messy though. So forgive me in advance, it's gonna be messy. I'm digging in. Oh my goodness, best sandwich ever. So I hope you like this technique for making your Mississippi pot roast in a fraction of the time that it normally takes. You can use it for your po' boy sandwich, or you could do whatever you want with it. Try out the homemade seasoning blend, and definitely, if you're gonna make this sandwich, do not skip the mayo.